A very good morning. Welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast Show Expresso on SABC3 as we bring you your daily update on the Oscar Pistorius trial. Of course, they call it one of the most watched trials of the century, if not the most watched trial of the century, which is all about right now uncovering the truth, but very difficult to do that, of course. But they do say that sometimes it's about paying attention to not what people say, but how they say it and how their body reacts to it. So the producers thought it a good idea to put me under a polygraph test, which I'll be undergoing a bit later on, some interesting questions. But let's take a look at day 11 of Oscar Pistorius' murder trial in the High Court in Pretoria, which started off with a firearms dealer, Sean Rentz, who testified to Pistorius' great love and enthusiasm for guns after Pistorius put in an order for a myriad of weapons, including 2 semi-automatic rifles and 3 shotguns. And then Warrant Officer van Staden, the man responsible for the crime scene photos on the 14th of February, took to the stand to describe what he had found at the scene of the Valentine's killing. Now, with us on the line is Omphi Mooki, journalist at The Star, to summarize the day's events. Omphi, good morning, and thank you once again for being on speed dial to give us a summary.
Good morning, Gadleha.
Let's start off talking, I think one of the big talking points of yesterday was the fact that June Steenkamp was back in court after only having attended day 1. Now, how did Oscar react to her presence there, and is there any indication as to, why she decided to come back to court?
Well, she had attended the first day of the trial and then went back to her home because they said her husband was not well. But another reason given was that financial constraints made it difficult for the family to stay in Pretoria throughout the trial. Mm-hmm. So we tried talking to her yesterday, but she wouldn't give any media interviews. Yeah.
And as you were there in the courtroom, did you see Oscar's reaction to it? And I also understand that Amy, Oscar's sister, tried to make contact with Reva's mother.
Yes. When Oscar walked into the dock, he greeted her and she simply nodded. But when Amy later went to greet her, they seemed to be having. She seemed to have welcomed Amy. They spoke for a little bit and greeted each other. Yeah.
Now, one of the big talking points as well was the testimony given by Sean Rentz, the firearms assessment expert, who was talking about some of the answers and the scenarios that were given in a test, an actual assessment given to Oscar regarding the appropriate use of lethal force. Can you give us some more details on that?
Okay. Things that came out yesterday was, would you shoot at somebody when, one of the answers that Oscar gave was that you wouldn't shoot at a target if you don't know who lies beyond. And that ties in with him shooting through the locked toilet door without knowing who was inside the door. Other questions posed was he gave answers where he said you shouldn't fire in the air, and we know that one of the charges relates to him firing through the sunroof of his car. And another question was the irresponsible handling of firearms. Yeah. And that ties in with the shooting, with the firearm discharging at a packed Tata's restaurant in Melrose. So he was given scenarios of whether when people, he saw people that he doesn't know jumping over his wall and advancing towards his home, would that warranty him shooting at them? And his answer had been no. Another question was this: they said the very same people now break your baklabas and then they enter your house and start stealing your expensive hi-fi. And his answer was no, you wouldn't shoot at them because there's no threat posed at you. Yeah,
so I guess, Advocate Kharinal was trying to speak to the fact that Oscar was very well aware of exactly when he was, by law, allowed to use lethal force.
Yes.
And then Mr. Rentz also gave details about a massive order to the tune of some 50,000 rand of firearms placed by Mr. Pistorius. Did you get any detail on that?
We published a story, the Star published a story last year on the 19th of Feb, shortly after River Steenkamp's murder, indicating that Oscar Pistorius had placed orders for a number of firearms. He had ordered 2 semi-automatic rifles, 3 shotguns, and 2 Smith & Wesson revolvers. But the order was cancelled a month after Steenkamp's death.
Yes. And then also Warrant Officer van Staden, who was responsible for photographing the evidence on the scene on the 14th of February, also took to the stand. Can you give us some more details on the nature of his testimony?
What was interesting with the warrant officer's testimony was the broken glass, the broken window. He was asked by Nell if he had found any pieces of glass around, outside or inside, and there was nothing, which indicates that the glass had been broken for quite some time. And this is a bit surprising because Oscar's lawyers want us to believe that this was a person who was quite scared of intruders coming into his house, who was like always on guard and fearing for his life.
Yes.
So now he sits without a window and he doesn't fix it. So that's really it's a bit weird why he wouldn't have fixed it.
Yeah.
The other thing pointed out by the photographer was blood smears on the ceiling, on the wall above the bed, and on the wall by the thermometer. We don't know as yet how those blood spots got there.
Yeah.
There were also blood spots on the duvet cover that was found on the floor. So we still do not know how those got there. But I believe when the blood spatter expert comes in to testify, he would shed some light as to how those spots got to be where they were found.
Yeah. Omphi, thank you very much for your update this morning. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Omphi Mooki there, journalist at The Star, giving us a brief summary of Day 11 of the Oscar Pistorius murder trial, which commences with Day 12 today at 9:30 at the North Gauteng High Court. And of course, you're also welcome to follow more in-depth coverage and details on sabcnews.com. We want you to also share your thoughts on our Facebook page. The question that we want to ask you today is this: do you own a gun? Do you think that we as individuals should have the right to own a gun or guns? It can be any kind of gun, a semi-automatic rifle or a shotgun. Should we as individuals own those guns? Or are we putting the power of death in the hands of people that are ill-equipped to deal with that power? That question will be on our Espresso Morning Show SABC3 Facebook page. Please engage with us. We'll be reading your comments a bit later on.